Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to the first sit down video of 2020. This is super exciting. I haven't filmed a sit down video in like over a month, so kind of rusty, but we're gonna get straight into it. Today's video, I'm gonna talk to you guys about my model journey. This is actually one of the first videos that I ever filmed for my channel, over 2 years ago now. I actually went through my old videos at the end of last year and I was cleaning up my videos a little bit because obviously when I first started my channel I was still trying to figure things out, and I came across the model journey video that I had filmed originally, and I just thought, like, now that I have my setup, I have my camera, I can make a much better version of that video. So that's what we're gonna do today. I'm really excited to talk about it, and this is actually gonna be a two-part video just because I feel like everything that I did before New York is like one part of my modeling career, and then once I moved to New York, that's when another part of my career started. So today we're going to start from the very beginning, talk about how I got my first agency, how I actually got into modeling, how it was the first few years, and also talk about like how I combined it with high school because I was modeling quite a lot while I was in school. Girl, I got a question for you. Can I get it inside? I get a lot of questions about how I started modeling, how I got my first agency, and like how I got into the industry, I guess. So I started modeling really young. I started modeling about 11 years ago now. That's when I got my first agency, but I actually had my first photo shoot experience when I was only 4 years old. My mom, she had submitted me for this contest, I guess. It was for a pretty famous Dutch magazine, and they were looking for kids to feature in their Christmas shoot. So my mom sent in some pictures and I ended up getting the job. So my mom and I were on set, and it's funny because a few years ago we went through some boxes that I had at my old house in Canada, and we still have the copy of the magazine. And yeah, my parents just said that I had a lot of fun, and I was really like thriving in that environment, so they like kept it in mind for the future. But as some of you guys might know, I traveled a lot when I was a kid. We moved from Holland to Calgary, which is on the west side of Canada. Lived there for a few years, then we moved to Aruba for a year, and then after that we moved back to Canada. So finding an agency during those times was a little bit difficult because we didn't know where we were going to be, how long we were going to be there. So yeah, I didn't end up getting an agency until I was 11. Again, you guys know I wasn't discovered. My parents actually took me and my brother to an open call. I've talked a lot about open calls on my channel because that's kind of what I would recommend for someone who wants to get into modeling or wants to sign with an agency. An open call is usually the easiest way to go about it. We were living in Ottawa at the time, which, if you guys don't know, Ottawa's in Ontario, it's in Canada. It's like 5 hours away from Toronto. Yeah, that was kind of my first like audition experience, because an open call is essentially kind of like an audition, you know, you have to show yourself and take some pictures. At this particular open call, I remember I had to do like a little runway walk, and I was so nervous. Like, I was very shy at this period of my life. And my brother, on the other hand, was super confident and like he knew exactly what he was doing. So he actually got, there's like a little envelope if you get chosen to come back to the agency and talk further. So he got his envelope right away and I didn't because I don't know, I guess after I walked down that runway and I was like, hey, I'm Daphne, I'm 11 years old and I want to be a model. I guess the owner of the agency was like, okay, well, you're way too young and you're way too short, but let's have you read a commercial and see if you know, if you have what it takes, I guess. So they handed me like this fake commercial script and I read it, and then she was like, okay, she gave me the envelope, and I was also asked to come back at a later day to like discuss options. Long story short, I ended up being with that agency for about 4 years, and that was my first experience with an agency and my first experience in the industry, I guess. So basically that first year I was not really doing very much work-wise. Obviously I was super young. So what this agency did is they offered an acting course and they offered a modeling course. I took both the modeling course and the acting course, and I have to say I did learn a lot. I learned how to walk properly. I learned how to pose. It was like every Saturday for 12 weeks or something, there was a class, and you would practice all the things. You would learn casting etiquette. You would learn also like the mindset that you have to have in the industry. So I really give props to these modeling classes. I know that there's, kind of like some sketchiness around modeling classes, but this class in particular and this agency really did teach me a lot of valuable things, especially at a young age. So I was really grateful for that. And then the acting course kind of made me more comfortable on camera. I think it was kind of the same as the modeling course, every Saturday for 12 weeks. And then every week you would get a new commercial or script, like a mini script. And then you would come back and you would practice it on camera. You would have your own like SD card. They would put it in, and then you could take it home and like you could learn from it and practice. Although I was really young and I maybe wasn't like ripe, I would say. I was very shy. I was kind of in an awkward phase, I guess, in my body. It was a good time for me to start because I had so much time to like learn and grow confident. In those 4 years time, I maybe booked like 2 or 3 jobs. I really didn't book very much. I did a short film, which was an amazing experience. That was my first like acting experience. I did a commercial for Chapman's ice cream, which is still circling around on the internet somewhere. I'll insert a little screenshot. It's pretty funny. I had braces at the time. And then basically other than that, I was just going on auditions all the time. And I have to give props to my family because these auditions were not in Ottawa most of the time. They were all in Toronto. So my dad, my poor dad, he would drive to Toronto 4.5 hours, 5 hours sometimes, do the audition, and drive back 4.5, 5 hours. And we would do that in one day. I think there was 1 or 2 times where we had to stay overnight because I would have an audition the following day too. But yeah, a lot of long days of driving just for an opportunity. Yeah, I have to give it to my parents for being so supportive, and like they really believed in me. I keep saying that I was really shy, but I really was shy. Like I would get so nervous before auditions during that time. I mean, I was young. I was like 12, 13, 14. I would get so nervous, and I think especially the auditions in the beginning, I would just kind of like bullshit them because I was so nervous, But it gave me a lot of experience, and it taught me to be more confident and how to not just like speak on camera, but speak to casting directors and stuff. So even though I didn't work very much and I wasn't super successful at that young of an age, I took a lot of that knowledge with me for later. So now fast forward to start of high school. If you guys don't know, in the summer from grade 8 to grade 9, my family moved from Ottawa to Toronto. So I started high school in a brand new city with all new kids. But that also meant that I was modeling in a brand new city. So what happened is my agency in Ottawa set me up with an agency in Toronto, and that's how I started really modeling. I think when I was living in Ottawa, I was doing a lot of like acting jobs thingies and like little kid stuff. And then when I started high school was really when I was able to start modeling. At the start of grade 9, I was still pretty short. I think I was like 5'4", but by the time I got to grade 11, I was like 5'8", 5'9". I'm 5'9" now, but I think in grade 11 I was about 5'8". So, that's kind of the height where you can really start doing like the real modeling jobs. I signed with an agency in Toronto. The agency I was with at the time was Elite, and I have to give them credit for really like building my book. Because when I started with them, I had no portfolio really. I just had a lot of like young pictures. I'd done a few test shoots with that other agency in Ottawa, but I didn't really have like work. The bulk of my high school experience, I shouldn't say it like that. The bulk of my time that I spent modeling in high school was focused on building my book. I think I talked about this in my video where I'm showing you guys my old pictures. I'll link that in the description box. But at the time, that experience was kind of frustrating at times because all those shoots were free. They would be all day on the weekends. You know, my parents had to drive me. I wasn't really seeing like the fast reward. At the time, it felt like I wasn't really doing very much, but in hindsight, I'm so grateful for that time where I was just doing like creative shoots and test shoots every single weekend, because a lot of those shoots ended up being submitted to magazines and picked up by magazines and are now tear sheets. Obviously, when I was in grade 9 and grade 10, like, we didn't know if I was going to go to New York or what I was really going to do, but those tear sheets are what ended up giving me the opportunity to get a visa to come to America. So without my Toronto agency at the time pushing me to do all these shoots and pushing me to shoot for free and do these creatives, I might not have been able to come here. So yeah, I do have to point that out. I think a lot of people can get excited about the idea of modeling and making a lot of money, but realistically, like, the first few years, I don't want to give you a number because for everyone it's different, and obviously I was super young, but the first few years you really have to put in a lot of work and not maybe get paid very much, if anything at all, and just put in a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of energy. So it's not really one of those jobs where you reap the rewards right away, you know? But if you put in the work in the beginning and you work really hard and you put yourself out there, then you're setting yourself up for success for later, essentially. So after 2 years with that agency, I decided to not re-sign my contract, and I wanted to explore other options. That agency was great, and they really, you know, they really gave me that foundation for modeling, but person to person and in terms of relationship, it wasn't the best fit for me. So I went and met other agencies, and I ended up signing with Ford Toronto when it still existed. It doesn't exist anymore. So I think that happened somewhere at the end of my 10th grade year, or yeah, end of grade 10, 2013, maybe? What year did I graduate? No, it would have been 2012. Somewhere around there, 2012, I think. So I signed with Ford Toronto, and Ford was like, you need to travel. We need to get you out of the country. You need to get some traveling experience. And I was like, oh shit, okay. Because when they mean travel, especially at that time in a model's career, you know, it's the beginning, she's young, she still, you know, needs to explore other markets. Travel means like 2 to 3 months at a time. So we're not talking about like going somewhere for a week, we're talking about a long-term stay in a different country or a different city. That was probably one of the hardest times of my life because I knew that I needed to do it, but my heart didn't want to do it. And I don't want to give off the wrong impression or something, but I always knew that travel was going to happen at some point, but when it was actually happening, it was really, really scary. Obviously exciting and, you know, a new adventure, and I knew that in order to kind of step up my game and become a better model, I needed that experience, but it was still scary. My agency decided that Tokyo would be the best fit for me as my first trip ever. So yeah, fast forward to August of 2012, I was going to Tokyo for 2 months. I had a 2-month contract with a really good agency there. Tokyo was so many things at once, I feel like. One of the hardest experiences I've ever had. It was one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had. It was fun and hard and amazing and terrible all at the same time. And I think part of that had to do with the fact that I was only 15. I was really, really young. And I'd obviously never traveled, I don't think I'd ever traveled alone before. Like, if I were to go to Tokyo now, I would be able to handle it much better because, one, I know what to expect. I know what the market is like. I know what the people are like. I know what their work ethic is like. And two, I'm just used to working a lot now. I'm working like usually 3 days a week now, if not more. The age thing was a big factor in what made it such a difficult trip for me. And on top of that, I was missing school, I was missing my family. So it was really like, it was just really hard. But there were really fun moments in between it too. I had my own room, I was staying in a hotel, and I had a really good relationship with my managers. Another thing about Tokyo is they drive you around everywhere, which is super nice. So like all your castings, you have a driver. The only time you don't have a driver is when you have a job. So the experience itself is very safe, and it's one of the safest places that you can go on stay as a model. And despite the fact that it was a hard time, I will always recommend that as a good first trip for a model, just because it's really safe. Yeah, it just really teaches you like how to be an adult at a young age. You learn to work with people who have a different work ethic, and people who work really hard, and people who are very particular, you know? I think that experience taught me a lot. Not only did it teach me how to, you know, live by myself, do my laundry, cook for myself, just like take care of myself, but it was also my first experience like one-on-one dealing with an agency, because my parents weren't there. It's a 13-hour time difference. If there was an issue, I kind of had to take care of it. So it really taught me to like stand up for myself and to have good relationship and communication skills with my agency. So yeah, really good learning experience. You know, if I had to go back, I would do it all over again. I think that was really like an amazing foundation for what I would be doing in the future. Little did I know what I was gonna face like later on in my life in this industry, but that trip definitely laid an amazing foundation for me. And I got to see so much. Like, I had free time on the weekends to explore. I saw temples. I went out of Tokyo. I saw all of Tokyo. Also, I have to add, I had a really good relationship with my teachers and my school. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but I traveled from the end of August to the end of October. So I missed the first 2 months of my grade 11 year. And my teachers were so supportive and so understanding. I did get work with me, so I did have like schoolwork to do while I was in Tokyo. But basically they just like let me do my thing, and then they caught me up when I got back from the trip. So I feel so lucky to have had such an understanding school, and you know, people who were really supportive of what I was doing. It was really cool. So once I got back from Tokyo, things really started to pick up. I started working more. I was doing Toronto Fashion Week, which was a cool experience. I was working like 1 or 2 days out of the week, and then the other 3 days I was catching up on schoolwork. And I was also doing like clubs in school. I was part of the student council. I did like mock trial, which is a law team. I felt super fortunate because I had the high school life that I wanted, and I was also able to build my future career and keep working and, you know, get that ready for myself. I did kind of have to sacrifice like the social part of high school. Obviously I had friends and I hung out with friends in school, but I didn't have time to do anything outside of school. I never really went to parties. I never really hung out with anybody either, unless it was on lunch. On top of modeling and on top of school, I was also still taking like vocal training and piano lessons. So that was kind of my life. I know it's such a different life from now, but yeah, that was kind of like what my high school experience was like. So now for the last part of this video, and the part that people are most curious about, is how did I go from Toronto to New York? And basically what ended up happening in my last year of high school, so 2013 to 2014, was that Ford Canada closed basically, and then all those agents transitioned to a new agency under a different name. So I didn't technically leave my agency, but I was now signed under a different agency name. Now that I had traveled, now that I had built my book over the last few years, it was time to meet agencies. So that whole last year of high school, like my 12th grade year, I was meeting agencies. And not just agencies from New York, but also agencies in Europe, agencies in Asia, agencies in different states in the US. And that in itself is a really good experience because you're, you know, trying to present yourself and talk to people and just like meet agencies. You never know what can happen. That agency, that Toronto agency that I was with at the time, submitted me to a bunch of agencies in New York, and there were 2 agencies that were interested, and one of them was Wilhelmina. I actually had the choice of which agency I wanted to sign with. Both agencies are great, and the other agency is still around and still has a really great reputation. And I know I would have totally been fine at that agency as well. But there was something about Wilhelmina that really spoke to me. Wilhelmina was actually one of the first agencies that was interested in me as a kid. And I really just like felt a connection with that, like the fact that they had known me for so long and had followed me. And the other thing was they seemed very excited about having me, and that's something that I always tell younger girls, and I tell you guys in my videos, is go with the agency or the agent which is even more important, go with the agent that is excited about you and ready to work for you. It's not necessarily about the name of the agency. It's about the agent and how much they like you and how much they're willing to invest in you. So yeah, ended up going with Wilhelmina because of all those things that I just explained. Obviously I made a great decision because I'm still with them now, and I'm still with that same agent who initially was like, yep, we want her. Just got really bright. So yeah, once we made the decision that we were gonna go with Wilhelmina, we signed the contract, then they were able to go and apply for a visa for me. I signed the contract in July, early July, and then because I wasn't necessarily in a rush, we didn't expedite the visa, and it took about 3 months for my visa to come in. I think it came in at the end of September. At the time I was impatient because I wanted to go right away, but it was good because I had time to really get my body in shape for New York. I remember that summer I was like making salads all the time and working out a lot. And I also had time to like make money and save money before I went to New York. So sometimes at the time I can be really impatient about something, but then in hindsight it's like, okay, it happened for a reason. And it was good because again, like New York was expensive and I had no idea whether I was gonna work or not. So the fact that I was able to stay for 3-4 months after I graduated and work a lot and make a lot of money was super helpful. In terms of my visa, because I know I'm gonna get questions about that, I was really not involved very much in that. I really think the only thing that I did was like send over copies of my passport and maybe some other personal info, but everything was done through Wilhelmina. And I was also in Canada, so it wasn't really my job. I had my agency in Toronto communicating with Wilhelmina. All I know is that you have to have a lot of proof and you have to have a lot of pictures. So that's basically it for part 1 of my model journey. Part 2 will be out in a week from today. So definitely stay tuned for that if you guys want to hear about my move to New York and how that whole experience was. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next one. Mwah.